Welcome to the Debrief, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by senior political columnist Tim Carney. Tim, the Biden administration's had a bit of a setback on the COVID transit mask mandates. Are they going to be able to get a win here because they're appealing? What are their prospects looking like?
They really, the federal judge in Florida really had them dead to rights on the fact that they didn't follow the rules in the Administrative Procedures Act. So this isn't necessarily about ventilation or about viruses. It's about how the executive branch is allowed to issue something like a mask mandate. And the basics of it is you're supposed to have a 30-day period for public comment that then the agency should respond to. They didn't. They skipped that. They had sort of flimsy ground for skipping that. And if you read the decision from the Florida court, it makes it very clear that they really didn't have the grounding to do this. So their effort to rush it out there as quickly as they could in February 2021 really is biting them now. I don't see how they can win on those grounds.
And they've had this problem with COVID protocol issues before in the courts.
Yes, absolutely, on the eviction rule, where they sort of see what they know is right, but then they try to kind of cut the corners to get there instead of playing by the book.
So these are some of the issues that have maybe contributed to Biden's poor polling. If you look at the president's approval ratings, whatever bounce he initially got out of the response to Ukraine, that's dissipated. Some polls have him as low as the 30s, others low 40s. What do you attribute some of these issues with his popularity?
I think it's mostly inflation. We'll find other things to complain about, but the fact is that the economy feels like it should be good but isn't, and not just that it's sort of things are expensive now, but there's this precarity when prices are going up. Am I ever going to be able to buy a home? Will I be able to replace my car that's falling apart? Next month, will my pay increase keep up with the price of groceries? And the fact is, in this case, where presidents always get blamed for economic woes, in this case there's a real credible case to be made that Biden caused this by spending all the money in 2021 after the worst of the COVID crisis was over economically. And so having this bad economic thing that you can pin to his actions, I think that's going to underlie all of his bad approval ratings.
And certainly he wanted to spend even more.
Yes. Which, that where he has planted himself firmly is on the side of the policies that are driving the inflation that's creating the dissatisfaction.
So speaking of dissatisfaction, there are a lot of Republicans who say that they think Biden is doing a bad job handling Russia's war in Ukraine. Do they really disagree with anything the president is doing, or are they making a statement about something else?
So this is a very important point about polling. When people are asked, what do you think of X's handling of issue Y? I think the best way to say it is just, do you like politician X?
Right.
And so when you get 80% in the latest Ipsos poll of Republicans saying they disapprove of Biden's handling of the Ukraine situation, while over 70% of Democrats approve of it, it doesn't really mean that, because when you look at that same poll and it says, should the U.S. help Ukraine? Yes. Should the U.S. help Ukraine if it risks dragging the U.S. into war? No. And there's total agreement. Independents, Republicans, Democrats all agree. So what Joe Biden is doing is what the public is prescribing. So these other poll numbers that say, oh, well, most of Republicans disapprove of Biden's handling of Ukraine, the real way to read that is most Republicans don't like the fact that Joe Biden's the president, and so they're going to ding him on that. If Ukraine's going bad, which it's a war, it's not going to go well. If Ukraine is going bad, they're going to blame Biden for it.
Certainly some of it, too, is a referendum on the conditions on the ground in Ukraine, though, right?
I mean, there's tens of thousands of deaths. What we're finding in some of these cities is just atrocities you can't even imagine. And there's no sign that we know when it's going to end or if Putin's ever going to give up unless he gets a huge chunk of land, and that would be incredibly dispiriting. So things are not going great there. Whether you could blame Biden is a totally separate question, but when we see things going bad, to blame the president, especially of the other party, is a very normal thing.
Thank you, Tim. You can read Tim and the rest of our commentary team's coverage at WashingtonExaminer.com.